Good morning. Our opening words this morning are from Nelson Mandela, from our Lifting Our Voices readings in the Living Tradition. I have walked that long road to freedom. I've tried not to falter, and I've made missteps along the way. But I've discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there's more hills to climb. I've taken a moment here to rest, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, to look back on the distance I've come. But I can rest only for a moment, for with freedom come responsibilities. And I dare not linger, for my long walk is not yet ended.
Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see beautiful faces sitting in our seats here in the church. On behalf of the entire congregation, I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Shenandoah Valley. I'm Nancy Tickner, and I'm your worship associate for today. We gather together with our doubts as well as our convictions, with our fears and our hopes, with our failures and our aspirations, with our sorrows and our joys. Whether you are joining us for the first time or you've been a member or friend for many years, we are so glad you are here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, whatever your background, whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived here, you are welcome. We are very fortunate today to have three speakers for our message who are in our congregation and who all have backgrounds in teaching. I realized that as I read their bios, so yay for teachers. The first speaker today will be Sharon Jaffe, who lived through World War II as a child and remembers the victory gardens, the blackouts, and the frightening air raid sirens blasting. She taught in both private schools and public schools, and additionally, she was a church pianist for her previous UU church in Springfield, Virginia. She was very active there with the creation of their gardens and their Green Sanctuary accreditation, which takes quite a bit of work. She currently teaches piano at home and at the Tree House Music in Winchester. Sharon shares her talents by often being our wonderful volunteer pianist during services in July and August. We always love to hear her play. Sharon and her husband, Ed, have been members of UUCSV since 2013. And our second speaker is Warren Golightly. Many of you also know him. He has degrees in political science from Bowling Green State University in Ohio and studied towards getting a doctorate at Kent State University. Warren has taught government and history at the high school and junior high levels and has served as an adjunct instructor at several colleges and universities, teaching courses in American politics. Warren left teaching to found his own business, which evolved into Golightly Taxes, LLC. Warren is now fully retired and resides on the family Virginia Century Farm, Golightly Bottom Farm, established in 1906. Warren has been a member of UUCSV since 1981. And our final speaker today is going to be Jean Trabulsi. She has worked as a communications consultant in public relations and journalism, focusing on the Middle East. Her last stint was in Arlington, where she taught for 16 years as an ESOL teacher. She presently volunteers full-time for the promotion of human rights in Israel and Palestine and in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Jean is a member of our church's Social Action and Justice Committee. Now, as Liz England comes back to help us light the chalice. Let us all say together the words for lighting the chalice, which hopefully you have memorized. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, to share. And I invite you to join with me as we say our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help our neighbor. To these ends, we covenant one with another.
Please join me in a time of silence as we hold in our hearts those struggling with challenges and losses from COVID, from racial and economic injustice, and from hardships and devastations related to climate change. Words of meditation, reading 152 by Maya Angelou. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived. But if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream.
We understand it still, that there is no easy road to freedom. We know it well that none of us, acting alone, can achieve success. We must therefore act together as a united people for nation reconciliation, for nation building, for the birth of a new world. Let there be justice for all. Let there be peace for all. Let there be work and bread and water and salt for all. Let each know that for each the body, the mind, and the soul have been freed to fulfill themselves. Let freedom reign.
Good morning. I don't like loud booms and bangs. They scare animals, children, and me. Like many people, I've taken the 4th of July for granted, not thinking much about its meaning. For me, the only time I've felt patriotic was on our bicentennial Independence Day, July 4th, 1976. When my family and I sat on a blanket on the Washington Mall, listening to patriotic music and adding our names to the time capsule buried in the National Archives building until 2026. So how do I feel now about Independence Day? Well, as a clue, let me tell you about my father. My father was an immigrant. He was born in Ekaterinoslav, Russia. He and his sister came to this country when he was 15 and she was 17. Their mother had died and their father remarried and was away most of the time. Their stepmother had no intention of providing for someone else's children. Their father decided that the best thing to do was to accept an offer from his brother, who lived in New York, to be their American sponsor. They took the train to Paris and from there made their way to New York. They sailed into New York Harbor past the Statue of Liberty, which was an incredible thrill, to Ellis Island. They began life in the U.S., My father slept on 3 chairs, a coat for a blanket, and a pillowcase stuffed with rags in a room with strangers. He was able to get a job as a chicken flicker. Pretty gross. At night, he attended Cooper Union, a technical school, to learn to be an electrician. America entered World War I in 1917. At 16, Dad lied about his age and joined the Army. He was assigned to be a motorcycle courier. Disaster struck when he and a passenger were hit with a mustard gas canister. His passenger died, and Dad was seriously injured. He was discharged with only 1 lung, an agonizing injury he could never forget. My dad became a naturalized citizen while in the Army. After being discharged, he got a job as a mechanic with Singer sewing machines. He did well on the job and actually invented the foot pedal, which was an important improvement. Singer kept the patent but awarded Dad $10,000. With that money, he was able to go into business for himself. He married and raised a family, sent a son to Juilliard, and was able to have a country cottage in addition to a nice apartment in the city. This was an immigrant's dream. When World War II broke out, he became a VFW commander. He was a proud patriot who felt that this country had given him a life of freedom and a secure future. He bought war bonds, participated in Decoration Day parades, now Memorial Day, and he donated a keg of beer every year to his VFW post in honor of my birthday, May 31st. So if anybody is wondering what I think about Independence Day, I am my father's daughter. With all its many faults, I still know that America is my country. The land the Europeans discovered was already occupied by the natives. These people, nations, and tribes were rarely respected or even recognized by the new settlers, who in most cases wanted and took their land. The Declaration of Independence was written by and for landed white men. Slaves and Native Americans were not included. The reality is that the right to freedom and opportunity is not available to all. As we have learned, individual freedom must be balanced with the needs of society, or we have chaos. Democracy requires a representative government to make laws that protect citizens without impinging on their basic freedoms. Achieving this goal is difficult and leads to much disagreement. While our democracy is an experiment based on capitalism, unbridled capitalism can lead to extreme economic differences, something we now face. I believe our democracy also depends on a free press. At this point, not only is the press in jeopardy, but truth itself is being questioned. At the same time, many people don't want to hear a real history because it doesn't fit in with their preconceived notions. This country is dangerously divided, and much as we might like to foresee the future, what happens next is unknown. For me, America is still my country with all its faults. As I said earlier, I agree with my dad. America can still be the land of opportunity, and I'm hoping that through our actions, we can help in that continuing effort. Thank you.
I want this to be a teachable moment. So when I talk about the experiences in my life that have influenced my patriotism, I'm hoping that you'll think about the experiences in your life that have influenced your patriotism. How I stumbled towards becoming patriotic. My first taste of the complexity of patriotism was the Vietnam War. Initially in 1965, I supported the war because how could the best and the brightest make such a colossal mistake? Later, the immorality of the war brought home the emotional impact of my country, right or wrong. I had laughed at this ridiculousness as an undergraduate, but that was when it was academic. Now it hit home emotionally. Like a parent or sibling with a loved one doing wrong, America was still my country, and I was obligated to support it. Blood is thicker than water. Just as most intellectually recognize that racism is not rational, some confronted with an emotional circumstance will regress to visceral vestiges of early prejudice. My patriotism did not extend to personal sacrifice. I found a way to legally avoid the draft. I, like Bill Clinton and Dick Cheney, was an ambitious young man, and my career plans did not include the military. Dick Cheney said it best: I had other priorities. By 1969, I had slowly, if reluctantly, moved from support to opposition to the war. On May 4th, 1970, I was a student at Bowling Green State University. The Kent State killings just 60 miles away traumatized me. My government was capable of killing me. Had I been at Kent State, I might be dead. I was in America, but I was no longer of America. I was a zombie, walking in America, but dead to America. I began to enjoy the times America suffered a setback. The military-industrial complex was getting its good uppance, its comeuppance, which it deserved. Nor was Vietnam the last time that arrogance and lies led America to military disaster. Recall the non-existent weapons of mass destruction leading to the Second Iraq War. The result, a thorough destabilization of the Middle East. There are forces, however, in the last decade drawing me back to the support of America. The world has increasingly become inhospitable to human rights and democracy. Authoritarianism has reared its ugly head. Increasing numbers of refugees are threatening to unravel even the most advanced nations. New technologies such as artificial intelligence, facial recognition surveillance, social control by social media, the internet making it possible to fabricate an entire alternative reality, complete with the capability of photoshopping and using authentic voices to distort and discredit. I fear if humanity loses its liberty, it will be impossible to recover it. And so for these reasons, I've turned a full 180 degrees and now fully support America. I've come to believe that to withhold support from America, support from America is to throw the baby out with the bathwater, or to make the perfect the enemy of the good. Still, I do not like the way an ally mistreats millions of Palestinians, holding them in an open-air prison, or a monarch killing and dismembering a dissident, or other myriad evils committed by so-called friends to which America turns a blind eye. But the stakes are so high and the outcomes may be so irreversible that as I stumble through my life, I stumble now towards becoming a patriotic American. America, how could I love you, loved I not honor more? And so sail on, O ship of state. Humanity with all its hopes and fears awaits thy fate.
Good morning. My name is Jean Trabulsi. On this 245th anniversary of the founding of the United States, I have been asked, has my view of July 4th changed? The answer is yes and no. You see, I wasn't even aware of the holiday until I was about 8 years old. And when I did become aware, critically aware, of the 4th with its jingoism, patriotic symbols, and fireworks, I intentionally tried to avoid it. I tried to get out of Dodge. After all these years, I still try to get out of Dodge. I try to get out of Front Royal on the 4th. I've lived in two places in which the United States government has deliberately and with malice harmed the people whom I love the most, the people of Japan and the people of the Middle East. My brother Jimmy and I were born and raised in a US-occupied Japanese military base in western Tokyo by my parents and two Japanese nannies, Mariko and Kimiko, where my family was part of the Allied occupation after World War II. At the elementary school, each morning I marched with my classmates to the outdoors courtyard to pledge allegiance to the Stars and Stripes. But I didn't look at the flag waving in the breeze because there was a much more compelling sight, a snow-capped, sparkling, and spectacular Mount Fuji. So you see, I mouthed the pledge that I had memorized, but I looked at the mountain. I wonder if that was the beginning of my disconnect, my confusion, the intentional gaze towards beauty, the mountain, and the aversion, the turning away from banality, the ritualized and the routinized. Later, when I learned about U.S. foreign policy, I felt disgust that the U.S. had bombed the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I read that those survivors are still scared to shave today because if they nick their face, they would bleed to death. You see, radiation from the fallout had made them a ticking time bomb. After all these years, the consequences of U.S. action, U.S. choices, still punished. As a young woman of Lebanese descent, I attended the American University of Beirut in 1970, where I felt the heavy hand of U.S. foreign policy again. Even the university, which was founded by Protestant missionaries, was soft power, to speak. A Western enclave in an Eastern milieu. Once with other AUB students, I visited a Palestinian refugee camp, Tel Zatar, near the Beirut airport. Among the 20,000 residents living there, I saw a pitiful little girl in rags in front of a hovel. And I asked my colleagues, well, how long have these people been living this way? And they said about 20 years, since 1948. And I said, they've lived like this for 20 years? And now, of course, it's been 70 years, 7-0. Still in the camp, still by the airport, still in hovels. I believe that among other nations, the U.S. has got to bear responsibility for this, for the impasse that is euphemistically referred to as the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Sure, the U.S. offers palliative care to refugees to keep them from starving, but the U.S. does not offer programs for systematic change to create a space where all are equal. But the Unitarian Universalist Association has. The UUA, since the 1980s, in 12 separate statements, has called for an end to the Israeli occupation of Palestine, the support of international law, and the freedom to boycott Israeli products, and for not equating anti-Semitism with the criticism of the State of Israel. And just last week, at the General Assembly, more than half of almost 900 people voted to support an action of immediate witness, which calls for conditioning U.S. military aid to Israel. This to me feels like the shifting of a tide that could lead to systematic change. In kindergarten, where I taught for 16 years, we teach the word consequences. The kids don't get the word, but when they miss recess because they made a bad choice in the morning, they get it and they never make that choice again. It seems to me that as adults and as a nation, we have forgotten the connection between choices and consequences, that the choices we make, the choices that nations make can result in physical, mental, and spiritual consequences. I wonder what are the consequences for the United States as a nation because of the choices that U.S. foreign policy makers have already made in Central Asia and the Middle East, in Japan. Don't get me wrong, I love the people of the United States, their openness, their friendliness, nowhere better practiced than in the Valley. I just don't love U.S. foreign policy. You may think this has all gotten me down, but it hasn't. I get through the day uplifted by my political activism, my work with the Virginia Coalition for Human Rights, the Warren County Teachers Association, and the Social Action and Justice Committee of this church. Every day, another letter to write, another phone call to make. I leave you now with a quotation about change from Diane Ackerman. It's about how people can change for the better. It also could be applied to nations. It goes like this. Who would deduce the dragonfly from the larva, the iris from the bud, the lawyer from the infant? We are all shape shifters and magical reinventors. Life is really a plural noun, a caravan of selves. To sum up my remarks, I ask you, can the U.S. be a shape shifter? Can the U.S. reinvent itself? And then I ask myself, when can I truly celebrate the 4th of July? Thank you.
Before we extinguish our chalice, I would just like to give a brief announcement from our hardworking yard sale people that are in our narthex in the back. After the service is over, they would love for you to come forward to their table right there and think about what volunteer job you could help with. It's going to be 2 days this year instead of 1, and we have 2 years worth of treasures to put out. So please consider helping with our traditional yard sale, which raises money for good causes, including our own church. Now, as Liz England comes forward to extinguish our chalice, please say together the words for extinguishing our flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of our community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. I'm kind of regretting that I didn't give this poem to Liz as well because her readings were so stirring, but I just love reading poetry, so I grabbed this ending for closing words myself. These words are written by W.E.B. Du Bois, number 502 in Singing the Living Tradition. Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness of tomorrow. Today is the seed time. Now are the hours of work, and tomorrow comes the harvest and the playtime.